By looking at some other videos on YouTube for the older quad runners, which have a similar setup, it's apparent that the rear bearing has to go in first. So we'll just follow those instructions. So I got my bearing kit here, outer and inner. They're actually identical, and then the two seals, they are not identical. So the seal with the spring on it is the rear seal. So this is the one that's going to go in here on this side. And the lip with the ring on it goes like that. So the seal goes in like this. After you put the bearing in, you put the seal in and drive the seal in this way. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some sandpaper, 120 grit. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to buff that out nicely, get rid of any debris that I have left in there. And then I'm going to use a large socket that fits right over top of your outer bearing race preferably. And then I'm going to drive that bearing in there. That bearing will go as far as it needs to, because as I said before, there's that lip inside there that won't allow it to go any further. Okay, I got the seal and, well, the bearing and the seal in. As you can see, the bearing went in pretty easily actually. The seal takes a little playing around. Don't try and force it, just tap it gently around the edges so it seats, and then you can drive it in all the way. The reason why I got everything wet in there is I sprayed some WD to make the job a little easier to put that in. Now we're going to go to the other side. So on this side, the only thing to remember is to make sure you put the race in between. So what I did is I sanded the sides just so there is no rust or debris on there, and I will sand the inside a little bit better. Okay, as you can see, the bearing and the seal are in. I've also took some grease and I squeezed it underneath the race, just a few dabs, and then I kind of greased everything. I figure a little bit of grease won't hurt. It'll probably help that race and the bearings kind of all settle in on each other. So the next step, I'm going to put the shoes on, the new ones. My shoes were completely disintegrated, as you can see. There's the lining, there's the actual shoe, there's no lining left on it. So I bought new shoes and we're going to install those and then put everything back together. Okay, shoes are in. One thing to note with the shoes is I sprayed a little bit of WD-40 into the mechanism underneath, just right in between there, and then as I was spraying in there I kind of moved this around to make everything a little looser, and then I put a little bit of grease on it. Now don't go overboard with the grease because you don't want any grease in your brake housing. Okay, so just put a little dab after you free the mechanism up. Just shove a little dab right in between there. Okay, now the other thing, loosened up my springs, sprayed some WD on those too because they were completely rusted. Now I wouldn't fight with trying to put the springs in after you have your shoes seated. Just put the springs on the shoes, both sides, before you seat the shoes, and then just kind of spread this apart. See that? Spread this apart and slide it over top of here and slide it on the bottom part. Otherwise you're going to be struggling with this, trying to get in there with a needle nose plier or something. Okay, the next step, we're going to put the dust shield back on. While the brake drum, the dust shield, I'm going to put this O-ring back on. Unfortunately I didn't buy a new O-ring. Mine doesn't look too terrible. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease on it and seat it in here. And then I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the dust shield on the inside here. I'm going to polish this off too with sandpaper. Put a little bit of grease on it, and then I'm going to slide it on and put it all back together. Okay, got the drum on. Got grease on my O-ring. The other thing to remember is your dust shield. Sand this surface off nicely so there's no debris and you have a good good contact, and also the O-ring surface here. Sand that off nicely as well as the mating surface here. Okay, so that's put back together. One thing I should mention, I noticed when I was doing this, there's a bolt here on the bottom of the case. I believe this bolt is there to maybe release some water in case there's a chance you got some water in there when you were doing some deep water fording or some heavy mud bogging or some heavy wheeling. So it's a good thing to note. Maybe pop this off after some heavy wheeling and have a look if there's any water getting in there. If there is, that means the O-ring is leaking, or maybe one of these seals. Okay, the next step is we'll put on the hub, or whatever you want to call that. We'll put this on. Obviously we'll clean it here again with sandpaper. Put just a little bit of grease on here. We'll clean this back surface off as well. Sand it all off. Put this back together, and then we're good to go to put the thing completely back together. The only thing else that's gonna have to get done is this this brake will probably have to be readjusted, since most likely it was cranked all the way either on the quad side or on here when those pads were wearing. So we'll have to do that once everything is assembled back. Okay, that's back together now. One thing to remember, this should spin freely. No rubbing or binding after you put it all back together. If it's not, you've done something wrong, maybe with the bearings or something. This one spins nice. Now we'll put it back into the quad and probably have to adjust the brakes, so that'll be the last step. Okay, so we got this back in the quad. So I tightened, or I put I snugged the shock bolt first, because I'm working on this by myself, so I had nobody to hold this. So once I did that, I was able to align this one as well as that one underneath. So that's done. Don't forget to feed your breather and your don't forget to feed your breather and your brake cable through this little hoop here that's designed for that. Now the only thing I have to do now is reconnect the brake and then the breather, and then we'll adjust the brakes. Okay, boys and girls, I got this thing finished and put together, as you can see here. Or you can't, maybe, I don't know, that's the sun here. So I actually didn't have to adjust my brakes. The lever is right in the middle. The foot lever could be brought up just a touch. So the way to do that would be to adjust this linkage right here, shorten it up a little bit. I hardly ever use the foot brake, but we'll see after we take it for a spin. And then your main adjustment is right here, if you can see that. Oh man, that's the sun here. That's your main adjustment right there. So that'll adjust your travel on this. Now this goes about halfway, so I'm happy with that. We'll see how it performs under braking. And that's that, and that's how you change the bearings and the brakes on a 99 Suzuki King Quad.